Hello, everyone. I'm Elon Musk, and I'd like to share with you some of the fascinating moments I've witnessed in Washington. These experiences have shaped my perspective on policy and the future we're building together, and I'm excited to take you through them. I am standing in this overlit corridor inside a building where every fluorescent bulb is humming like it knows more than it is saying, and Donald Trump is pacing at the end of the hall, radiating that familiar cocktail of vanity and panic he keeps mistaking for leadership, while the people around him pretend not to notice the way his voice is tightening each time another Republican breaks ranks. I am watching him watch the headlines about his own Department of Justice, the very machine he has been insisting he controls with an iron grip, now being accused by his own party of threatening their staff for daring to demand transparency on the Epstein files. And he is acting like this is just another branding problem, something he can shout or insult his way out of. Thomas Massie is somewhere across this maze of offices speaking into a camera with that unsettled precision of a man who knows he is playing with fire, describing how FBI agents and one of Trump's loyalists are leaning on his staff, warning them about criminal investigations if they do not fall in line, and Trump is pretending not to hear it, pretending it is all noise, even as his jaw is clenching so hard you can practically hear enamel grinding. The absurdity of it is landing in slow motion. Republicans are going on air saying they are being threatened by the administration they helped create, yet Trump is still acting like the only problem here is that they are not praising him loudly enough. Marjorie Taylor Greene is posting her melodramatic warnings online, saying she is not suicidal, saying that if she is harmed, people need to look at powerful interests, and Trump responds by mocking her name in one of those juvenile riffs he mistakes for wit, and he does it while his base floods her office with threats. He is creating the chaos and then whining about the mess. Meanwhile, survivors like Annie Farmer are speaking with quiet clarity about the intimidation they endured, and the contrast is so sharp, it is cutting through every shot in this hallway. Annie is explaining how Maxwell participates in the abuse, explains the threats against her family, and Trump is reacting as if the only thing that matters is whether her words make him look weak. And as I stand here, the DOJ is scrambling to distance itself from the senior official fired after being caught on camera discussing the redaction circus around the Epstein files, a firing so abrupt it reeks of panic rather than principle, while Trump is pacing in circles, muttering about hoaxes and loyalty, trying to convince himself that this entire mess is a conspiracy against him rather than the natural consequence of his own arrogance. The agents involved are talking about thousands of pages, special redaction projects, overtime that runs into absurd numbers, and Trump is waving his hands like he is annoyed by the existence of details, annoyed that the machinery he claims to command is leaving a paper trail too large to shout away. I am watching him pretend none of this is unraveling, pretending the Republicans sounding the alarm are disloyal rather than terrified, and the air around him is vibrating with the desperation he is trying and failing to hide, because even he seems to realize he is losing control of the people who once treated his tantrums like scripture, and the tension in the room is rising as he keeps insisting it is all fine, all fake, all somebody else's fault, while everything around him is very visibly catching fire, and he is still tossing matches like he does not understand how combustion works. Trump is now moving deeper into the West Wing suite like he is trying to outrun the echoes of Massie's accusations, but every door he pushes open only funnels him into another room where someone is whispering about the DOJ threats, the discharge petition, the staffer who panicked after being told they could be criminally investigated for fraud if they did not straighten up. And I can see the twitch in Trump's eye each time a new piece of the story leaks through the walls he is pretending are soundproof. Massie is replaying the threat in interviews with the precision of a man who knows he needs to get the details right, describing how an FBI employee aligned with Kash Patel leaned in close and warned his staff that an investigation would be launched if they kept pushing a petition. And Trump is standing here spinning excuses, complaining that Massie should have kept it private, as if the issue is decorum rather than an abuse of power unfolding inside his own administration. I watch him try to smother the scandal with bluster, telling aides masses, exaggerating that the FBI would never do such a thing without his explicit permission, which somehow manages to make him sound even more unhinged because he is too self-absorbed to realize he is admitting he believes the DOJ is his personal enforcement squad. The man is swinging between denial and ownership so fast the air is stuttering around him. Across the building, a notification pings about Marjorie Taylor Greene's newest outburst, her insistence that if something happens to her, people need to look at foreign governments or powerful figures. And the irony is so thick, it is almost suffocating. Because even as she warns the world she's not suicidal, Trump is calling her Marjorie Taylor Brown, and his supporters are bombarding her with threats, proving that the most immediate danger she faces is the base he keeps feeding like a beast he cannot control. And there he is again, acting wounded that she is not showing him total devotion, acting betrayed that she is not shielding him from the consequences of the panic he stirs in the people who worship him. Down the hall, an aide is whispering about the Epstein survivors, about Annie Farmer, speaking with a calm that feels heavier than any shouting match in this building, describing the intimidation, the abuse, the threats made by Maxwell to silence her sister. And Trump reacts like someone has interrupted him during a golf swing, irritated, inconvenienced, trying to figure out if her testimony can be spun into something that benefits him, completely missing the point that the survivors are telling the truth with a steadiness that exposes just how deranged the political theater around them has become. Meanwhile, the O'Keefe recording is circulating like a ghostly confession, showing a DOJ deputy chief casually confirming the existence of the files, explaining how Republicans would be redacted, how Democrats wouldn't, hinting at special treatment for Maxwell. And the moment the story breaks, Trump orders everyone to act like the guy deserved to be fired. Yet he cannot hide his frustration that the firing looks too sudden, too sloppy, too defensive, like an agency trying to bury its own panic under protocol. Agents are discussing the so-called special redaction project, describing thousands of pages, late nights, overtime that balloons into absurdity, and Trump is now shouting that it is all a hoax, even as the documents show nearly 5,000 hours of overtime logged, a figure too large to dismiss with a catchphrase. I watch him pace, muttering about enemies, about people out to get him, about a grand conspiracy against his greatness, while the truth is far simpler and far uglier. The chaos is coming from inside the house he built, from the officials he empowered, from the arrogance he cultivated, and from the paranoia he refuses to surrender. The more he denies, the more the walls around him feel like they are starting to bend under the weight of everything he is pretending he can still control. Trump is now gripping the edge of a briefing table like he needs the furniture to validate his authority, insisting to whoever is still willing to stand near him that the so-called transparency effort is nothing but a smear campaign. Even as new leaks show agents exchanging emails about boxes of physical files arriving for scanning, about overtime budgets exploding, about the frantic push to manage redactions before anyone outside the building can see just how chaotic the whole operation is. He is trying to spin it as proof that the DOJ is being too thorough, as if the presence of overworked agents sleeping on couches between shifts supports his narrative rather than obliterates it, and the staff around him are nodding with that glazed obedience people adopt when they know arguing is pointless, but ignoring him might trigger a tantrum. Bloomberg's reporting is floating through phone screens everywhere, descriptions of New York agents flying to Winchester, photographing stacks of documents, scanning them, sorting them, while supervisors debate whether they should release the files in rolling batches to feign transparency. Trump hears the phrase rolling release and instantly concludes it is a personal attack, complaining that the FBI is sabotaging him by refusing to delay everything until he can manufacture a better excuse. And I am watching the exact moment he realizes he cannot spin away the sheer volume of work logged by these teams. When he mutters that the whole thing is a hoax, someone timidly mentions the 4,737 overtime hours documented between January and July, and the way his face twitches betrays a panic he cannot mask, because even he understands that hoaxes do not usually rack up nearly $1 million in labor costs. The agent's internal notes are spilling out, references to special training sessions, PowerPoint slides on redaction protocol, instructions on handling sensitive video footage, and contradictory statements surrounding Maxwell's security classification. And the weight of that detail is crushing the flimsy narrative Trump keeps trying to resurrect. What rattles him most is the calm precision of the federal judge demanding clarity. Judge Engelmayer asking the DOJ to itemize exactly what categories of Epstein-related material they possess in light of the Transparency Act. And Trump is muttering in circles because he is watching a judge treat this like a real legal matter instead of a loyalty test tailored to his ego. The DOJ's list is sprawling across screens like a confession they never intended to make. Grand jury subpoena returns, prison records, property footage, search warrant materials, civil litigation files, interviews, depositions, even archives from the Epstein estate itself. Trump keeps muttering that the estate never cooperates, that the DOJ never receives documents from them, and yet the inventory contradicts his line word for word, revealing that the very materials he insisted were inaccessible have been in federal hands all along. The contradiction lands like a thud in the room, heavy and undeniable, and I can see him scrambling mentally for a narrative that doesn't make him sound either incompetent or complicit in the confusion. But every option he reaches for is collapsing under the weight of his own theatrics. He complains that the judge is overreaching, then complains that the DOJ is underperforming, then circles back to calling everything a political hit job, and the staff around him are watching the contradictions pile up like debris from a collapsed roof. He is gripping the table harder now, trying to insist that he still has control, still has authority, still dictates the flow of information, even as every leak, every whistleblower, every overtime log is documenting a universe of panic unfolding inside an administration he claims is operating like a finely tuned machine. And as he rants, that machine is sputtering in real time, gears grinding, alarms blaring in the background. While he keeps insisting the noise is part of a perfectly crafted symphony no one else is smart enough to understand, Trump is now storming into a smaller conference room where the blinds are half closed, like they are trying to shield the space from the embarrassment leaking out of every headline. And he is snapping at aides to pull up the DOJ letter to Judge Engelmayer again, demanding someone explain to him why the government is acknowledging possession of categories he swore publicly did not exist. And the staff are exchanging that silent glance people wear when they know the truth is too obvious and too inconvenient to say out loud. He is pacing in jagged circles, ranting that the list is too long, too detailed, too revealing, insisting that someone inside the DOJ must be sabotaging him, because he cannot accept that the chaos is simply the result of years of mismanagement he dismissed as brilliance. The letter's inventory is still glowing on the screen. ISP records, cloud data, photos from search warrants, civil litigation materials, victim communications, property surveillance, interviews, DMV records, postal logs, and Trump is waving his hands like he is swatting away mosquitoes, demanding that someone remove anything that makes him look uninformed about his own administration. His irritation spikes when he reaches the section about materials provided by the Epstein estate, and he mutters that the estate never gave anything to the DOJ, that the agency lied to him, that the press is twisting this. But the documents contradict him in plain language, and he reacts as if the bullet points themselves are personally insulting him. Staffers are trying to explain that the DOJ is cornered by its own paper trail, that transparency is now a legal obligation rather than a political choice, but Trump is not listening. He is grumbling about traitors, complaining that Massey, Green, and the whistleblowers are coordinated, that the timing is suspicious, that everyone must be conspiring to damage him before he can control the narrative. And the delusion is settling over him like a fog thick enough to choke on. Meanwhile, down the hall, conversations are shifting toward the fired DOJ official, the one caught on O'Keefe's recording discussing redactions and Maxwell's treatment, and the lawsuit filed on his behalf is now circulating through every office like a reminder that the administration's panic is leaving legal scars. Trump hates lawsuits he did not initiate, hates stories he cannot drown out with insults, and he is now insisting the man deserved to be fired then insisting he does not remember authorizing the firing, then insisting the firing proves nothing except loyalty. And his contradictions are colliding so quickly, he is creating verbal traffic jams even he cannot navigate. Emails from FBI offices are surfacing in real time, detailing the sheer scale of the so-called Epstein Transparency Project, describing back-to-back trainings, overnight review sessions, and internal debates about how to redact video footage without drawing suspicion. And Trump is refusing to absorb the reality that none of this aligns with his hoax narrative. He mutters that the agents are exaggerating, that the reporters are twisting numbers, that overtime logs can be faked. But the desperation in his voice betrays a growing recognition that he is losing his grip not just on the messaging, but on the people who once would have lied for him without hesitation. And the more he blusters, the clearer it becomes that the panic around him is not orchestrated by enemies, but triggered by the truth itself. A truth too sprawling, too documented, too heavily recorded to be smothered by one man's outrage. He leans against the window, staring out with that hollow frustration of someone who is finally realizing that the institutions he tried to bend to his will are now collapsing under the weight of his demands, and the room around him is holding its breath as he insists he still has everything under control, even as the evidence flooding through every doorway says otherwise. Trump is drifting back into the main office now, moving with that agitated swagger he uses when he is trying to convince everyone, including himself, that he is still the gravitational center of the building, even as the pace of leaking documents and panic statements makes it obvious the universe around him is spinning without his permission. He is demanding updates, demanding loyalty, demanding explanations for overtime hours, FOIA disclosures, whistleblower warnings, and every demand only exposes how little control he actually has, how every lever he pulls is either jammed, rusted, or connected to machinery he no longer understands. Phones are buzzing nonstop with fresh excerpts from the Bloomberg release, emails showing the FBI debating strategies for processing physical boxes of Epstein files, talking about photographing, scanning, classifying, logging, redacting, and Trump is dismissing it all as bureaucratic fluff, as if redefining the chaos makes it disappear. A senior aide tries to explain the optics of having counterintelligence agents logging weekend shifts for a project. He keeps calling fiction, but he cuts her off, insisting this is all part of a bigger plot, some shadowy effort to harm him by making the government look incompetent, oblivious to the fact that the only person making the place look incompetent is the man shouting in the center of it. Across the room, another staffer is whispering about the judge's newest request, pushing the DOJ to clarify which materials overlap with the Transparency Act, and Trump is scoffing at the idea that a judge can tell him how to shape the narrative, muttering about overreach, muttering about enemies in robes, muttering about people who don't respect power. And the irony is so heavy, it practically bends the table. Screens light up again with another DOJ email referencing the Special Redaction Project, mentioning how teams reviewed surveillance footage, interview recordings, time-lapse videos from offices tied to Epstein's operations. And Trump is now insisting that none of this proves anything except that the agency is wasting time, refusing to comprehend that the existence of so much material means the story is not shrinking for him, it is expanding. He is pacing faster, flipping between declaring total innocence and total victimhood in the same breath, claiming that if the files show anything troublesome, it is because someone planted it there, because someone is out to get him, because someone wants to embarrass him personally, and the narcissism is so suffocating that even the room seems to recoil from it. Staffers are quietly trading looks they used to reserve for late-night crises, the kind where everyone knows the problem is not geopolitical or legal, but psychological. Leaders spiraling while insisting the planet is spinning wrong. A junior advisor attempts to brief him on Massey's newest statement, warning that if the DOJ is willing to threaten congressional staff, whistleblowers may be in even greater danger, and Trump dismisses it as whining, as if acknowledging any legitimacy in the accusation would crack open a truth he is too frightened to face. In the background, another alert flashes, a new wave of survivor testimony, calm, factual, grounded, yet devastating in its simplicity, the kind of clarity that makes all of Trump's flailing denials look even more childish, and he reacts as if her words are aimed directly at him rather than at the system he is straining to keep opaque. The tension in the room is beginning to feel like static before a storm, thick enough to cling to the air, and Trump is now standing still for the first time in hours, staring at the cluster of documents, emails, overtime logs, whistleblower notes, redaction plans, and court filings stacking up like a wall he cannot scale, insisting he still controls the message, still controls the machinery, still controls the people, while every face around him is quietly acknowledging the truth that he is the only person in the room who still believes the illusion he is trying so desperately to maintain.